Welcome again to another episode of Under the White Coat, our series where we spotlight key opinion leaders and get to know a little bit the personal side of these emerging physicians. I'm pleased to be joined by Dr. Nauzer Forbes, a clinical assistant professor at the University of Calgary and the director of their Advanced Therapeutic Endoscopy program. Dr. Forbes, great to have you today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So Nauzer, maybe for our guests, you can tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to become a therapeutic endoscopist.
Yeah, sure. I guess that's kind of a loaded question, but I always knew I kind of wanted to, both think and do, I guess, as the adages go in medicine. So I was really close and conflicted between, general surgery and internal medicine. So I knew that if I pursued internal medicine, it was probably going to be something procedural. And, to me, I have, my perfect dream job because there's really nothing that straddles the line between the two disciplines as much as therapeutic endoscopy, in my opinion.
And how did you come to decide between general surgery and a career in internal medicine? You sort of have to make that decision very early on as you go through your medical school training and deciding between residency. How did you come to that decision?
Yeah, that's another good question. I mean, I guess the short answer is happiness. I just kind of looked around. A lot of the people that I saw, not that they were, anything short of spectacular on the surgery side, but I just felt like the hours were, a lot less forgiving. So, again, I really, I'm blessed to have the perfect situation for me where I've got, the perfect amount of time dedicated to work and great balance with home life too.
That's amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about your practice and how you've been able to balance your time? I know you're big into research and you do a lot of clinical work as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've been, very fortunate. In Calgary, we've got kind of an alternate reimbursement model that physicians can sort of be a part of, where it's really perfect for a young researcher, as you said, like me, to protect my time. So I started out in 2017 on faculty in Calgary, and since then I've had about 45% of my time protected for research, with a smaller chunk of educational protected time, and then the rest of the 50% is clinical. So I'm actually going to move to a slightly higher chunk of protected time in the near future. So it'll be closer to kind of 60-40. So as you said, with that 60. We've been lucky and been pretty productive in doing work in both sort of luminal as well as pancreaticobiliary outcomes research. We're making some good sort of connections both throughout the country and in the US as well. So,
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those research studies that you're doing? What's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. My baby, if you will, is kind of a very granular, high fidelity prospective initiative in biliary endoscopy. So we're actually in the process of expanding pretty rapidly. So we've been recruiting for about 2 years now. We've already recruited about 1,800 patients into our study. And so McGill is just about to join on next week.
Wow.
And Victoria, hopefully by the end of the year. And then soon after that, Ottawa, Oakville, Kingston, and then we're going to break into the States hopefully at some point in the summer. So my hope is to have over 5 years of, again, high fidelity, granular, true prospective data in over 15,000 patients when we're all said and done. So that's one of the things. But we've also got a randomized trial going on assessing the infection control properties of a novel scope device. And then we're a participating center in multiple prospective RCTs as well.
That's amazing. Obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and that has had major effects on clinical practice and research. Have you seen it having an effect on your research, or maybe clinically? How has it affected you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who wasn't affected in some way. So on the clinical side, again, I've been pretty lucky in the sense that most of my clinical work is really advanced procedures, and so those actually really haven't been touched too much, just because if somebody's got a sick gallbladder, or somebody's got bile duct stones, or somebody's got jaundice, that really doesn't go away. So we're kind of in that acuity zone where we haven't seen a drop off. But I can speak to my minority of my practice, which is general GI. We saw a huge dip, obviously, when we had to shut down, sort of elective or semi-elective non-urgent endoscopy, basically for a good chunk of time. And we're now seeing, the consequences of, those patients who maybe held off going into emerge with, things that they thought were manageable. But unfortunately, we're seeing later stage cancer, we're seeing more cancer, we're seeing, more advanced pathology in a lot of conditions, which is, kind of the other side of this pandemic that doesn't get as much press, obviously. And that this is not to say that anyone's made any wrong decisions, because I think it's a no-win. You obviously have to protect lives and not overwhelm the healthcare system, but at the same time, there's this cost when it comes to advanced stage disease in each of our specialties, but also just the the psychosocial burden, I think, is massive too. So, and then the research side, obviously, things got shut down back in March, where we couldn't really be at the ground level anymore recruiting. So we tried to kind of take that and put a positive spin on it, and basically turned our entire team into an army of meta-analysts, really. And so we've got now we're getting to the kind of near end stages of probably 8 to 10 meta-analyses that we've kind of been working on for the better part of 2020 as a result of that, and then phasing back into clinical work as well.
That's a very interesting perspective, I think, to hear that from yourself as a therapeutic endoscopist, gastroenterologist. I mean, as a cardiologist, I see it on the other side. We had very similar experience. We had a massive drop in our admissions to the cardiac care unit. We had our procedural volumes for elective angiography were definitely down, and the referrals were going down, and we were just kind of curious as to where all these patients were happening. And now, we didn't think that people suddenly were becoming, healthier in their heart lifestyle practices. So it was, as you kind of said, we're now seeing the other side of it, and I think it obviously hasn't had the same level of media attention, but it's a very important thing. You talked about on the research side, you're pumping out a bunch of meta-analyses. I've seen an emerging thing, a lot of research, the research groups that have come out, these living meta-analyses, and I know you may be familiar, obviously you're familiar with it. Can you describe what that is? Are you guys doing any of those?
What do you mean by living?
I don't know. I've seen a few things kind of from British meta-analyses that are going to, they're constantly updated. So, they're updating these meta-analyses with COVID-19 and things of that sort. What's your thoughts on that kind of research that's being conducted?
Yeah, I mean, I think meta-analysis is a great tool, but I'm sure you've heard the expression "garbage in, garbage out." So
yes,
unfortunately, I don't think, again, there's a really great right answer when it comes to doing research on a pandemic within a pandemic.
Yeah.
You've got to balance, obviously, the urgency of disseminating information at a fairly rapid pace with having that information be worth disseminating. So you're right. There's a lot going on right now when it comes to COVID, both clinical research as well as just kind of synthesizing everything. And I think we're in very different time. I think as a researcher in 2020, it's kind of interesting to see that COVID related stuff go to the top of the pile. And we've set up a North American collaborative looking at digestive manifestations of COVID, and we looked at early sort of practice changes in COVID as well when it comes to both general and GI as well as endoscopy. So we're by no means exempt from doing COVID related research. And I think it's important, but I do think that it's important to still follow the process. So there've been a couple of glaring examples in GI anywhere where things have been submitted, revised, and accepted supposedly all within like 48 hours, which is as just unheard of. I can't get editorial assistant to look at my work in within a week. So I think just you have to be careful about how you do things, and you still have to go through the scientific method. There's no shortcut, or there shouldn't be anyway, for COVID or anything.
I completely agree with you. I think we're all learning in this kind of pandemic. As you said, it's unprecedented times, and I think but you also highlight the importance, as you kind of said, that we are dealing with a very critical topic, and it's actually, I think we may be doing a disservice at times when we put out research that may not be as rigorously vetted or hasn't gone through the appropriate channels. I think we can't ignore that thorough peer review process and some of the research practices that kind of have to go along with kind of that entire system.
Yeah, and it seems like he's really immune, right? Because I mean, I'm sure you and your listeners know about the New England Journal and Lancet papers that were tracking.
Yeah.
So, if that didn't put everybody on high alert as to the potential for, in that case, it was, fraudulence, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of, crummy research out there that's, clearly not fraudulent, but it's clearly not worth
Yeah, it may not be worth the the hype it's getting, and I think we're kind of trying to find that balance, as you kind of said. And then once a paper gets out there and the media picks it up and the hype train kind of goes on, it can lead to dangerous things. I may have wanted to take hydroxychloroquine. No, I'm kidding. But I think you've highlighted some of the appropriate challenges there. Um, some of our listeners may not be familiar. Dr. Forbes is a great bass guitarist. How during this pandemic,
not great, just good.
just good. How's during this COVID time? How have you been able to kind of keep yourself sane? With doing some of the things you like. Balancing your family life and personal life during this during this crisis.
Yeah, I mean, family life has been great, actually. Just not to make something positive out of something negative, but I think truly that's kind of the only way that we've managed to stay sane. So right back in March when everything went down, we pulled our then 5-year-olds out of school. Obviously everybody was out of school, but it was kind of special. It was kind of nice, just me and my wife and our daughter being at home and just kind of enjoying each other, and not we take that for granted, right? Every now and then. So I think it was a nice sort of few months where we were just together and just living kind of a simpler, easier life where we were all just kind of at home. And then we started to drive each other crazy a little bit.
That's not. I know you're joking. I know that's natural.
The truth is, like, we were just totally happy to be together. So that was kind of nice. And now we're actually, my wife and I are expecting another.
Congratulations! That's amazing.
After the New Year, so that's going to be another bit of fun.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to music, I mean, everything's kind of shut down. Nobody's performing anymore. So we kind of decided that in this band that I'm in right now, I'm the lead vocalist and rhythm guitar. So no bass. I'm as bad as I was before. I'm worse now because I haven't been playing. But we're not really doing much of anything now, just because all the weddings were canceled that we were supposed to play at, and all the bars are now closed, and so there's just nothing to do. So
you highlighted the schools. We kind of had a tough decision to make about going back. Do we put our daughter back in school? And ultimately, we decided to put them back in school. What's the consensus you're finding amongst your colleagues there, and even in yourselves? Is how have you guys dealt with that issue?
yeah, I mean, great question. We struggled with it a bit, but I must admit that we didn't struggle a lot. We made the same decisions as you guys did, and Allie's back at school now. And for us, it was, I guess, as simple as being like a two working parent family. But at the same time, I think again, it's just how long is this going to go for, right?
Yeah.
I don't personally see a huge quick out, as much as I'd like to. I think there's a very real scenario that we could be here next year and things don't look appreciably different. I really hope I'm wrong. But we're heading into obviously a second wave across the country. So, but it's interesting, like you say, in terms of my colleagues, I think if there's a spectrum from 0 to 100, there's everything from 0 to 100. That is what I don't know about you, but
Absolutely.
Every now and then I'll say, hey, should we meet for a coffee? To one of my colleagues, and I'll get a text back that that was the most offensive thing I've said. And, I haven't been to a restaurant since March. How dare you? Like so it's everything in between. And I think at the end of the day, you just have to do what works for you and your family, right?
Yeah. I think it's absolutely, like, you take some of those things for granted, right? You wanna go grab a coffee with someone, even for a meeting. I've had had to throw meetings with lots of people. You want to go grab a beer with someone, and it's just you kind of miss those small little things that you used to do back in the day. Speaking back in the day as if it's been less than a year, but I guess pre and post COVID. I think a lot of people share that same sentiment, as you said. We don't know if this is going to be appreciably different. We may still be here in a year's time. What do you think the horizon is for, what's on the horizon for practitioners in therapeutic endoscopy? How do you think we're going to have to adjust and going to go forward?
It's a great question, and I am not a very smart person, as you know, so I certainly don't have any magical insights when it comes to this. Truly, I don't even have a really good guess, other than I think things are probably going to get a little prickly again, before they start to ease off. I hope a vaccine, number one, helps, and number two, is widely adopted.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're looking at some sort of a different situation in spring, but I really don't know. And when it comes to endoscopy, I think again, it just totally depends on your unit, because even within the city of Calgary, I think there's quite a bit of variation. And when I talk to my colleagues in the GTA, for example, your unit basically, and your throughput and your capacity for social distancing and the waiting room and recovery rooms, there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of variables that go into the equation of how much of your original throughput can you actually do. So I think that's a very variable response depending on where you are geographically.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I think we've learned, we probably can't do the same level of shutdown that we did. I mean, depending on kind of where this modeling goes, the credit to these epidemiologists, and the infectious disease specialists, that you kind of don't want to believe some of their modeling data, but then it's really come to fruition. But I don't know if we can afford another shutdown. I don't, even in the cath labs and things like that, and I'm sure the endo suite can't afford those kind of shutdowns again either.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it'd be one thing if we were in, a different healthcare reimbursement model like the States, where, the solution to reopening could be as simple as hire a new, therapeutic endoscopist, or hire a new interventional cardiologist, and hire, 6 new nurses. We don't really have that luxury here, as you know, right? The input is fixed when it comes to healthcare spending, and we've just got to be wise about how we do it. So I agree completely that I don't think that we can afford, for a number of reasons, another full shutdown anyway. The good news is I'm pretty sure that Jason Kenney's not going to let that happen in Alberta.
Yeah, we'll see what in Ontario, how it's all going to shake down. But I think those are the right insights. Dr. Forbes, I think our guests are really going to appreciate your insights, learning about your practice, your research, and everything you've kind of mentioned today. I want to thank you once again for joining us today on Under the White Coat.